Let's stay on for the after 45 just for us three to recap. I know we all met separately today. Is that okay for you?
Yep, I've only got about 10 minutes, but I can jump back on later.
No, I only have that 10 minutes too.
We're live, guys.
Hey.
We're live.
Hi,
everybody, and hi everybody at the What's on It Elephant and Castle Facebook page. This is the Tribe from Retribe, and we're coming to you today to talk about the last year and the 3 lockdowns and how Retribe has worked with the community at the Elephant and Castle, but also how we've grown in numbers and also our offerings and what we're doing. It's been an eventful year, and one that I know that we're all grateful for, and we're going to talk about over the next 45 minutes. My internet connection is a little bit unstable because they took the mast down from around my corner. So if I skip in and out, you ladies can kind of take over. But first of all, Michelle, Melissa, thank you for being here. How are you?
Tired. That's it. I'm okay.
Michelle, how?
I'm good. I still, it's the weird feeling like a Monday, but it's not. It's a Tuesday disorientation.
Yeah. This is Nick's cutting out.
I'm just doing some share links, but my internet's not doing very well today. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, hear you and see you. Roger.
Okay. So, ladies, it's been a very eventful year. We've had 3 lockdowns starting just a little over, a month ago. Just over 1 year ago, we started with our lockdowns, and we came on board with the Elephant and Castle community to originally work on feet on the ground around the shopping center, around the community, engaging with the community members there and in the hub. And then all of a sudden, Melissa, you were here, right? And bam, or you just left, or you were just getting ready to leave to go back to Canada because of COVID, and all of a sudden everything changed. Can both of you kind of describe that bang wham ballop of what happened in March and April last year, and how you felt over that first lockdown?
That feels like 100,000 years ago. I don't. Michelle, why don't you start? Because I have no idea.
It does. It does feel like so many things happened. I think it's been every year when you look back on the past year, there's always so many different kinds of events. But I think one thing this year is we all unite with the same kind of, oh my God, what a year. It's that everyone has their own individual things going on, but there's such a collective understanding of, yeah, okay, I get it. There's such an understanding. And this time last year, I was getting ready to set up my own business. So I was already making a really huge change in my life. And there was other things going on, and it felt exciting and scary and overwhelming, all the feels all at once. And I remember going into London the day that they just announced the lockdown. I'd actually had a passport appointment at HMRC because I'd already been booked in to get my passport. And going into London that day was the eeriest feeling, and I'll never forget that feeling. It was so eerie in London on that Monday, and just to know that we were going to go into lockdown. What did it mean? How long was it going to be going on for? Being worried for people's health, for your own health and for your family and for your friends, and what does this mean? And it was very bizarre and so uncontrollable. You just kind of had to roll with it. And I think the whole year for me had that theme: just roll with it, just go with the flow, try and roll with it.
Yeah, I think for me, so I did go back to Canada because I had to, visa stuff and all that, and my health. I had to go back to Canada. I remember being really afraid, but I remember feeling I needed to be more afraid than I felt, and I wasn't sure why, because I was like, okay, this is a thing that happens, it's shit, and we all have to kind of rally together. But I also remember feeling very activated, very afraid, but not sure where the fear was coming from. The messaging was be afraid, threat, everything's blah. And then I was like, I guess I have to be afraid. And I remember struggling with that. And I was in quarantine for 2 weeks in a little den yeah, this is right. It's coming back. It was a little den in a condo that I couldn't leave the den. Um, and it was very claustrophobic and it was a lot of grief and uncertainty and not anger, which is rare for me, but yeah, I think a lot more of grief and like not knowing, but trying to roll with it in the way that felt most aligned with me, but knowing that there was a lot of parties at play here. So
Mm.
my decision, I didn't have a lot of the same kind of agency because it felt very linked to everyone else's well-being, which is, I think, true. It's like a spiritual practice of mine, but it's also like, oh, this is not just about me anymore. Like it felt like it really revealed for all of us how connected we all were in terms of sickness. But so I'm gonna like fast forward, like flip that around, and now it happens in terms of like healing and wellness, how we're also so connected. But that's, I guess, for 40 minutes into the conversation. Yeah, so I remember feeling that like a lot of grief and uncertainty, and like just literally like trying to figure out one step at a time, like really like one breath at a time and figure it out. That's kind of my memory.
Yeah, I felt like I think back at it now, and it almost felt like I was arming up for war. Like every time I went to the grocery store, it was pick up more packs of antiseptic wipes. It was get more gels. It was like prepare, prepare, prepare. And I felt almost invigorated by it. I felt like a unity. I felt like you know when I was walking by people on the streets, you know, in Bromley on the way to the Littles to grab stuff. Everyone was like connected. Everyone had eye contact. When we went for a 1 hour walk a day, you know, everyone was talking to each other as they kept social distancing, walking, and that stuff never had happened normally. And so I felt really connected. I felt all like we've got this thing, and it was almost this rise up for of connection, and we're going to do this, you know. And especially with the British mentality of what happens when we go to war, like there was a real coming together, and I felt really good about it. And then I was like, I need a new laptop, I need a ring light, I need a microphone, I need all these things because I'm going to start doing all this podcasts and videos and everything. And then all of a sudden, like what, like the world was doing that, the world was posting videos, the world was posting stuff, and it was beautiful. But I kind of lost my way in terms of like what's the direction. And I remember doing things like a yoga challenge and all these things that I'd never tried before, and a meditation challenge, which were really, like I say in the beginning, it was really this community that I felt, and connection that I felt. And then it all of a sudden, you know, people started to get affected by it. You know, the mental health was starting to come out. There was some, you know, anger, Melissa, like, you know, from some people. There was certain global events that happened too in America with George Floyd, and then all of a sudden there was like, oh, I'm not happy with this. And again, you felt this uprising where, you know, people needing to protest, people needing to have a voice, all of a sudden being constrained by, you know, this global pandemic and our freedoms. So when did it start to feel, I know it felt uncomfortable for everybody at some point, but Melissa, I know you were in the condo at the early stages, but what other elements of the pandemic and the challenges of that first lockdown, when did you start to feel uncomfortable? And I'll go to Melissa first on this one because Michelle went first last time.
Um, I don't know if it was the first lockdown, but it's actually when I start feeling more uncomfortable was actually when I came back here. And I guess the second lockdown, like the first lockdown, it was kind of, there was a newness. It was like, well, it's supposed to be 2 weeks. 2 weeks bled into 3 months, and then it bled into, and here we are. So I think the second lockdown, when I was here, I started realizing that the things that used to bring me comfort were actually becoming quite new, like were very annoying to me. So, for example, walking Mago around the neighborhood, we have like 60. I time it 60 minutes in the morning, and we actually have our plans because for me, knowing my roots provides a lot of safety and comfort for me. Just so I know this is my route. Da, da, da. And I started noticing that doing the same walk every day was actually not so safe or comforting for me anymore. It was actually creating a lot of like annoyance is the best word, and discomfort, where I was like, if I see the same street and that same tree, I'm gonna lose it. So I noticed that that was a thing. So I started to just, even with that, be more creative in taking a different route, or starting even half an hour later, you know, somehow. So I noticed that that's what it was happening. It was around the second lockdown. Um, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it was more, the first one was fine because I was in Toronto. I was hopping from like really sibling to sibling to parents. And so there was always movement, and it was like, there was nothing uncomfortable about it. Actually, there was, but not emotionally, just more physically, which is fine. It was more the second lockdown here settled, where I was like, nah, I need something because I'm in London and I'm not in London, you know? It felt like that. I could be in any city in the world. So that was for me. I don't know if that answered. Michelle?
Yeah, Groundhog Day over and over. Yeah, I understand. For me, I think the most, I'm not sure if I would say uncomfortable, but I can't think of another word for it, would be watching the news. So I haven't watched the news for years and years. It's just a thing, I think, that I decided maybe 6-7 years ago to not watch the news. And it brought so much peace into my life almost instantly by not watching the news, like keeping up with what's going on. And still doing research pieces and bits, but not watching mainstream media news or reading mainstream media news. And it was when I think we'd come out of the first lockdown, because I'm used to working from home as well. So the routine for me that change didn't feel so crazy, and moving into the digital world didn't feel so much of a change. But it was when sort of they eased the first lockdown and people were getting together, and the arguments that people were having, or the confrontations people were having about what you should do, and the opinions about it. And then when the vaccines came out, and it's like, I know this stat, and then no, I know this stat, and it's witnessing those conversations. I found that really uncomfortable, because it was like, don't ask anybody about Brexit or what they think about coronavirus. Like, it was sort of like turned into a political thing. And I think for me, I found that really uncomfortable in a time where actually people are missing contact and connection, and going, everyone that I know, everyone in my life, I don't think there's one person I would exclude here, has gone through an internal process, like a really deep internal process through this past year. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying that. And I think in a way that's beautiful in its own right, but it can be really lonely, painful, and everything else that goes with that. So it was that, witnessing that disconnection and that kind of level of fear from people that I really care about as well, like my friends and my family. For me, I think was the most uncomfortable.
Yeah, I resonate with both of you, that it kind of was that, like, as things went along, things became more uncomfortable. I had certain realizations in the first lockdown, and they were ones that I think were a process of that had happened 4 years ago, and these realizations were coming around self-care. And for me, like this year has been a lot of discoveries around, my relationship with me. For 45 years, I didn't have a relationship with me. It was always a relationship with others, so that I could find some kind of identity in what others thought of me. And the first lockdown really gave me an opportunity to reflect on, from the time I was 45 to the time I was 49, on all of the stuff that I've done. And in that, and also in working with Melissa and her practices, and what we try to help with other people, I started to glean some of that stuff to myself. And this idea of self-care and self-love really kind of blossomed in me. And I think where that was the really great part of that first lockdown. But then my frustrations started to, and my kind of irritations came from, I want to share this with other people, and I have friends and people who were who were deeply affected by some of the things that were going on in the world, not just COVID, but the Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement. And it was like this thing of like, I wanted to try to, it was this frustration of not being able to kind of help people, I think, in getting face to face with people. And it was, in turn, it's kind of helped the evolution of our business and what we're doing. So my frustrations really came in this point of like, I really want to become an advocate, for a guy who's 50 years old, sits in a white bodied, privileged man, and the background that I came from, to being able to kind of, get these to help. And I think that's where it was really, what can I do? And then it really brought me down to, what can I do? Which are just little things, like being considerate to people in grocery stores, and carrying bags for people if you need it, and delivering things, and little stuff, and little things in my recovery community. And then it was, you know, the frustration of really kind of chomping at the bit of wanting to do things, go back into, I want to do things now, you know, rather than, oh, the universe is kind of putting a pause on things right now. And this is a time to kind of just be guided. So that was the bit. It was fighting this thing of like wanting to do stuff and then actually, oh, maybe I just need to be guided here.
But I think that's important to
Melissa, it looked like you wanted to say something.
do. And I just started saying it anyway. But I think so. I think not doing something is actually doing something as well, and I think that's an important piece. Resting and regrouping and recalibrating is just as active as whatever we might consider action to be. So like that's one piece. The second piece of like, what can I do? What can I do? I know this sounds so like something, but when we sit and we meditate for 5 minutes or we figure out how we can be more kind to ourselves, right? How we can like develop the relationship with ourselves, that is actually doing something that will impact other people. That is a change, capital C as well, even though it feels like little c maybe because we just don't think our work for ourselves counts as doing things. But really, if you play it out, if you pull back, it's the more you take time to cultivate a sense of love and kindness and compassion in yourself, those impacts reverberate. So like when you're at the grocery store and somebody's taking that last thing of pasta or toilet paper, but you're in a practice of like compassion and peace, then you might not respond angrily, right? Angrily is a word. Angrily, you might not respond in anger or frustration. So like even like that impact, that's a change. That's the flow. So however bananas it sounds, like working on ourselves does impact the global consciousness, the collective consciousness. So anyway, that's what I want to say to what you said of like doing something, working on yourself is doing something that impacts us globally. That's what, to sum it up.
I totally agree with that. I used to use this mantra that is work harder on yourself than you do on anything else every day.
Say that again. Say that again.
Work harder on yourself than you do on anything else every day. Because you don't realize what that does outside of you. Like if you are making sure that you are aware of your feelings, if you're triggered and you feel angry, you can start to explain that better because you can understand it yourself. If you are feeling something, you have more chance of being able to be heard in that moment when you understand what it's like to turn inwards. So yeah, I completely agree with that. I think a lot of people had that experience where they were like, I don't know what's going on. Like all of a sudden I've got to look at myself and what's happening.
Absolutely. The relationship with the self got really real quick, right?
Yeah.
Nowhere else to go. Like physically, emotionally, you had to sit with all the things that came up for you that, I mean, if we're really honest, we could run away from most of our lives, right? It's easy to run away and distract ourselves from the things that cause a little unpleasantness or discomfort. And then here, the whole world was in a global unrest, a global discomfort. So we couldn't say, well, this is just experience is unique to me, although it is, the way it lands is unique to everybody. There is this kind of, there was this kind of collective sharing of an experience that like could unite us, could get us like supporting each other, or as we saw sometimes too, can let the fear run and run the course, which creates more disharmony and unease. But anyway.
I think what I'm getting from this too is that it really what landed with me and with what you guys were both sharing is that our first thoughts, you know, and our first reactions to a feeling, to people going out and buying toilet paper and, you know, all these things, my first reaction to it or something else wasn't a truth. You know, it was like anger or sadness or and it's funny how the universe works. It's when you play it out over a period of time and you look back and you reflect it, you go, I wasn't angry, I just needed something to talk about. Or you know, I wasn't angry, I was scared. Or I wasn't, you know, and all these things. But it's this practice of learning that my first reaction sometimes isn't a truth, or sometimes it is, but I have to go on this journey to discover that it is one. And I Yeah, sorry.
No, go on.
No, you go ahead. I was wanting you to kind of come in on this one, Mel, because yeah.
I think the thing around, Michelle, also interrupt me if you need. The thing around anger is curious, right? Because anger and fear are kind of like best friends. And so, and usually when anger is present, it's just because fear is not so far away. And anger is the one who's going to protect us because fear is the one calling the shots, if that makes any sense. So anger and fear are kind of really close companions. So it's not so much about being angry. It's like, what are you afraid of? Right? Like, and not in like, what are you afraid you weak? It's more like, what is present for you that is causing you to be unsure, to not find an anchoring or a ground? And your fears, you're like, okay, you're afraid. We're not going to do that right now. We don't like that. So let's get angry because there's almost safety and comfort in anger. It gives us kind of like the ability to go forward and be strong when it's not. It's just keeping our fear a little bit at back. So I think that's always a curious thing for me. When anger is present, it's really because fear is not so far behind. So the question becomes, if anger is present, what am I afraid of? What is it protecting me from? You know, that's what I want to share.
That's the deep question though, right?
Yeah.
That's the deep question, and we have plenty of time to think about it. And also it's being able to help each other and support each other through those moments in a different way. So some people had never done a video call before. You know, some people didn't even have the technology on a phone that they had or on the computer that they have to do what we can do now. Didn't know that this stuff was available. And you know, you were saying at the beginning, Nick, like the Elephant and Castle community was all about being on the ground. And I know we've had I can't remember her name for the life of me, Iron Gran, and she was doing you know, and they, the switch from something that is so physical, the exercise that they were doing together in the park and being physically together and supporting each other, all of a sudden they had to do that separate. And it's not just separate, it's getting people online, it's being able to understand and be familiar with new technologies and all of these changes happening literally within a day with some people's lives. And it's being able to understand new ways to connect to people and new ways to do that. And I think one thing that's come out of this is just innovation. Like people have been way more creative and to innovate, and local farms, local businesses being able to produce like little food boxes that they take to people that can't get out. And so many acts of kindness that I have way more acts of kindness than the other side of it, I think, from my experience.
People are so adaptable, man. We will show up. Like, this is amazing for all of our humanness and the fear and the angers that are present. We are able to like innovate, show up for each other, and kind of like, okay, this is what's happening. How are we going to adjust? How are we going to move? Like, we're actually quite resourceful and quite powerful. But it does go back to the thing of like, I know, Nick, you and I talked about this before, I think probably on one of these, but this idea of like war culture or wartime in certain aspects. I can't remember the name of the author who wrote this book. Stephen something. Anyway, about the importance of like how people come together in a united front when there's like a crisis, that people can rally behind each other and can find their purpose and kind of support each other in ways that maybe they wouldn't have to be forced to. Not to say that's ideal, like nobody wants war or global crisis, at least I don't. But the idea is that we are called into action, and so we get to choose. And usually, mostly people choose kindness and supporting each other. They don't choose the hoarding. They don't choose the violence. I think we're wired innately to be kind and to come, let's go, let's do this together. So sometimes we need these kind of like unravels and upheavals on global scales to call us into action in ways we might have not showed up for before. What was that person's name in that book? I know you're trying to look it up right now. Come on. The one book you and I
I'm not. Stephen Younger, the Tribe book, right?
Yeah, anyway.
Younger?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It's interesting in terms of like the crisis and on our call to action and how we can step up and feel connected.
Yeah. And speaking of what you were talking about, Michelle, how people have pivoted and adapted. You both have been very, very busy over this last year with work. and your practices. So can you describe how this last year has, and I know it's all with you, with energy work and with operations work and with wellness and healing work. These are constantly evolving anyway, evolving practices. But really over this last year, if you guys can describe how you've had to pivot and adapt, and what realizations have you had with this working through technology, because basically that is what 99% of the stuff that we've done has all been through Zoom. So what's your journey like with and I know what Melissa's going to be like with this, talking to her laptop for 6 hours a day. So but also with regards to energy work and healing through a piece of technology, how have you been able to adapt, and can you explain some realizations that you've had through it? Either one of you go.
I mean, energy doesn't care. We're working through energy. Like, okay. That's all I could come with right now. Michelle, I don't know if you feel the same way, but energy is energy, and so we channel it, right?
Yeah, I
But
think.
how's that, like, how? Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to say, I completely agree. If you send healing to somebody, or if you do any kind of energy work and you're reading people's energy, you can feel it in yourself and it's still present. But it's how you feel to receive energy. I think from what I've seen, it's how you receive as the person on the end. So when you do like a coaching session, one-on-one session with somebody, if you're sitting having coffee with them, the way that they receive that session is different. From what I've seen was different from the one-on-one on the computer, and people were a little bit more blocked or not sure because they didn't want to look at their face on the video, and and it's just being aware of that stuff and knowing what makes them comfortable. Melissa, I know when you do a session, you say to people, like, if you want to turn off your video, if you want to mute yourself, whatever, and it's having that, creating a safe space, knowing how to do that digitally and physically. And yeah, that's really important, I think, for people. And because they're in their bubble, and also you don't know what's going on behind them. They could have 3 kids in the next room, and the dog and the cat and the wife, the husband, the mum, the dad, the brother, the sister, whoever. You've got no idea somebody's environment, and that energy sticks in the same room. So if you're working and sleeping in the same room, and how is that affecting the person? And I think that's what's been quite different from what I've seen.
Yeah, all the lines have blurred together, right? There's living space and the working space has become the same, and that's like hard. It takes a toll. There's only so much. I mean, we are adaptable, like we said, but we also have a limit. We can meet our capacity, but so that's always a curious thing of like what's happening behind the scenes, which is a good general rule of thumb for like just how to navigate your way through the world in general. Is like there's always stuff going on behind the scenes, right? We're only getting this much of what is happening for the person. I mean, Michelle, this morning, like you asked me one question and I like just gave you the download of like 25 years of my life by answering one question. And so I'm saying that because that's what's always happening, is we're just seeing the moment in time we're seeing, which is beautiful and lovely, but we are all dropped in this moment from all our experiences, and we can't pretend they're not part of us. So if you take that and you put it in this space and then a virtual drop, and then you have all the things happening, you're working with a lot of things at the same time, which we always are, but this is different because we don't have also that comfort of safe touch, right? Or a cup of coffee, or a eye contact that's like present in a different way. So it's the same, but also very different. If that's the
Explain the difference. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted you to explain the difference, because for 10 years being a frontline social worker who's gone and seen the what's the word, when you can smell and touch and taste in that environment, and then all of a sudden just to being here for you, and also Melissa, working with without naming names, but one of the fastest growing tech companies in the world, so you've kind of pivoted completely different from this work that led you to here, and that's what I wanted to kind of get out of you, is what's that been like for you, going from frontline social worker to working in this corporate environment with basically people around the globe, in high pressured sales environments and leaders. What's it been like for you?
All right. No, It's been curious. I'm definitely out of my comfort zone because I definitely would prefer to be in the front. I mean, I'm still a frontline worker. I'm still in the front of it all. I'm getting a lot of, I'm not. The population is different. Obviously, corporate settings is not necessarily my cup of tea, but it also is because it's not about corporate settings. It's about the people. So who cares? Because it's I'm working with people. So so this is the thing. We're all from the same. It's just the way from the same source, the same energy, the same whatever. We're all just a bunch of different expressions of the same thing. And so sometimes that shows up differently. So whether you're in jail or you're working like 14 hours, 17 hours a day, the impact of you in terms of your relationship with yourself and your worth and your love shows up the same way in terms of how you talk to yourself. I don't know if I'm making sense actually. The backdrop is the same but different, and then the way you like yourself, the way you love yourself, the way you think about yourself, that's what I work with is the person. So I guess on one level it doesn't matter if it's a corporation or a person living on the streets because it's the person that like I'm kind of sharing space with, and that's just how I work, hopefully. So, but I recognize your point, Nick, is that it's different, but I don't think it is because it's the people. It's the people I work with. So I don't feel a big difference, to be honest, because I'm doing trauma work, I'm doing supporting work, I'm doing, okay, let's sit with this pain and this grief work. That's the work. It doesn't really matter about where the person is coming from or how much they're getting paid or what their hours are or where they're sleeping. It doesn't matter. So that's why I can't say it's different because it's the same because it's the people. I didn't.
Michelle, Michelle, the same thing to you, really, because um, you've had a huge shift, really, because you were with known frameworks and now you're here. Can you kind of describe your journey over this last year and where you know how you've been led to where you are today, and how this this changing environment and you know from I want to say your old life, but from that life to this life, and how and how you got to where you are.
Oh, how long? We don't have that long left. I'll try and put it in a little nutshell. I think, like, for me, the being able to be with people physically is
Mhm.
where a lot of I've learned and been like right next to my mentors before, and growing in that sense, and then having to be left with that at the end of a 1 hour session and not sit in the same office with people, and that's been an adjustment, and being able to include kind of the spiritual work and the energy work with the business stuff was big. And actually, I mean, thinking about it, not knowing how that would be received and digitally, because all of those conversations I'd had before have been in person. So it's kind of like organically just led to a conversation about, this is what I do, this is kind of what my belief system is, this is the methodology that I use, these are my experiences, this is who I am. And being able to take that but put it in writing to someone, or say that on a half an hour video call slot, you have to be more selective in what you say or what you choose. That's wrong. That's not true. It's not being more selective. You have to trust yourself more to just be in the moment and not worry about the prep for that. And my journey has been setting up No Frameworks, which was a dream of mine for many, many years, which is all about connecting people and operations. And fundamentally, Melissa, to what you were saying before, it's people. You're working with people, and the resilience that companies have shown is because of the people that they've got. We were talking about the war concept and the pulling together, that feeling of unity. And I read somewhere a few years ago, I can't remember the book, about how the military kind of operate, and it's not that they're fighting for the country, they're fighting for the person that's left and right of them. And it's that kind of that same feeling, and it's fighting for the people that are with you. And it's being able to, what the journey has been for me is it's been amazing to help companies get that resilience by working with people on that basis. And they've had to learn, and they've had to ask for help and ask for support to be able to do that with remote work now. It's getting everybody's IT set up, getting all of that kind of thing is just all of the logistics. It's how you look after people here. And for me, that's been truly amazing to see that with people have done that so well. And a lot of leaders are like, what can I give now? And they don't know what to give because they're so used to giving physically. And the leadership is changing because they're now giving from a different place, which is beautiful to witness.
Agreed. I think, Michelle, what
Okay.
you're talking
Sorry,
reminds
go ahead.
Okay. This idea, so to answer your question in another way, Nick, and then Michelle, let me know, because I think you and I share this, is like really, this year has almost been of like me stepping into myself in a different kind of way, because I'm 1/3 of this thing and I am the one doing the spaces. So I get to, in terms of like me co-facilitating, it's like I get to own my practices and share that in a way. When I was working for a social service agency and I was like a psychotherapist, and there's certain guidelines. I mean, I'm still a psychotherapist, but not because that's one, I'm like this, all of these things. So I think this year has really let me like, Mel, what are you about? Because like I've struggled a lot with this, like, because I'm not clinical. I mean, anyone who tries for a second to meet me knows like I don't do that. Not that that's wrong, but that's not aligned or like authentic. It's not authentic. That's the word. It's really trying to get me to be as authentic as I could. So this year kept like pushing me to the limits, dancing around these edges where I was like, oh, okay, I guess however much it is nice to sell this package in this kind of way, that's not me. So what am I? I am a person who's full of tattoos, who has a master's, who can do these things, who also cries most of the time and like is so sensitive and aware, but will show up and fight and advocate. So I'm all these different pieces. And so really just like honoring all of those bits of me and saying, this is all of me, here we go. And like also trusting that authenticity and knowing that it will land for some folks and it will not, and that's okay. Like that doesn't change anything about my specific unique offering. So a lot of it's been very much like coming into my own self and what feels right for me in this moment of time, and knowing it's probably going to change in a month. So I don't know, both of you, how's that been in terms of where you're at with stepping into your own kind of expression in this moment of time?
I think what you talk about, Melissa, for me is like vulnerability and authenticity and trust. And these are the things that, Michelle, I was trying to, alluding to you and your journey, is that for people now to know that you are 1/3 of Retribe. So you've moved from, owning your own company to becoming a partner in Retribe. And this is something where, for me, my journey is unlearning, a lot of unlearning, and this is through vulnerability and authenticity, is knowing that what I learned 20 years ago or in 1996 when I set up my first business does not serve me today. It actually didn't even serve me back then. I think it did because it was easy to make money back then, because there was a lot of money being thrown around in the advertising world. And those budgets have become thinner and thinner and thinner, but yet those mentalities that people were using of like high performance, win at all cost attitude, go through the wall, all this kind of stuff is embedded in me to some degree. And that's what I thought it needed to set up a business. And now I'm in this journey of like unlearning these ideas. And this is where tender is the new tough has come from. And, just addressing and unlearning old ideas that didn't even really serve me then, but they definitely do not serve me today. And that knowing that we are all part of something far greater than us as individuals, and that has been a big thing for me as a 50-year-old guy who's been and it is a lot of fear, around, being seen as a certain type of person in our industry. So, Melissa, I suppose with going on what you were saying, it is this authenticity of vulnerability and finding a capital T truth in ourselves that might be that truth today, but it also might evolve. It doesn't have to be a truth all of the time. It's something that is evolving. And that's what I wanted to get at, because we've only got a few minutes left, is that Michelle is part of Retribe now.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when you were talking, it was reminding me when you were talking about like just trust, and we said at the beginning, I had a feeling when I was starting up the business and I was working on it and I was talking to people about it and just developing it. I mean, it was stuff that I was already using with my consultancy, but actually formulating it into its own model. And talking about working for something greater than yourself, I think I always had this feeling the right people are going to come at the right time. I don't know when, it could be years down the line, but right now I have to get started. I don't know why, I don't know what the message is, I don't know what the purpose is, but right now I need to start. And that push, I think, you know, it was quite strong. So it was going through that, and then we happened so organically. It was so organically. And if I'd gone looking for it, I'm convinced, you never know, but I'm convinced it wouldn't have happened. And it happened so organically. And we were talking about the business having its own energy and its own entity and being its own thing. And I think it's just kind of plugged in, and going from that and then being able to actually come into a group where we support each other and we can work together in such a synchronistic way, like you don't get that on your own. And we are working for something bigger because we believe in something that's so much stronger, that has nothing to do with us. It's just happening through us. And for me, that's beautiful. And the biggest shift in my career has been this year, and it's been with Retribe, which feels awesome.
Agreed.
And I think that is the message really to people is, you know, to just try to look at things with forward-looking glasses, instead of, you know, if you have set up a business in the past and if you have done things, you know, pre-pandemic, then to, you know, I'm not saying like, you know, do it the way we've done it, but to be open to it, like, let's throw out the old playbooks. Let's look at our businesses and our personal lives and any kind of like leisure activities in different ways. There's so many things going on in the Elephant and Castle over the next year. And I think it's just encouraging people just to, you know, just try something a little bit different. I don't know how you would, Melissa, maybe you have a better way to phrase that, but, you know, just to be, I suppose you would use the word curious, right?
I was like, just be curious. Like, just be curious about what's possible. And also, it's like, Nick, to what you were speaking of before, just because you have a thought doesn't make it the truth, doesn't make it a truth. So I think that's also an important piece, is like, even be curious about the thoughts you have, because sometimes a lot of the stuckness can come in, like, if I have this thought, it must be true, it must be I'm a bad person, or I'm never gonna da da blah blah. Just be curious. The mind's gonna think, let it think. It doesn't mean it's the truth. So on all levels of your life, like, be curious. And if you had to dream big, and you don't have to do anything with it. Just let yourself explore that perhaps you get to have all the things that you get to have just because you deserve it, for no other reason than the fact that you're alive. You don't need to quantify or qualify anything other than you're alive. You deserve greatness, right? And love.
Mm.
Okay, bye.
Okay, see you later. Let's just do quick little two things. Highlight of the last year and what you're looking forward to in the next year.
I met a famous person last year. That's my highlight. I don't even say who, but I say a famous person. My highlight was like my dog finally working for me. I'm joking. That's a lie. Was working for me. Because of Mago, I was able to have an engagement with this person who I respect so much, and it was so glorious. That's my highlight. I'm sorry, everything else good that happened this year, but that's my highlight. That's all. What was your next question?
What you're looking forward to in the next year?
Seeing this person again and having a coffee with them and being friends forever.
Nice.
BFF. For me, the highlight of last year, I think, was taking the decision to start my own business, because where that's led me, I could never have got here without making that decision. So that's the highlight of last year. And what I'm looking forward to is Retribe. I'm so excited about connecting with communities and being involved more and doing more things and being able to connect with more people and to grow like together. And for me, that's why I love business, because I love that companionship and that energy and that partnership. So for me, the next year is connecting.
Nice. Mine is, I suppose the highlight is discovering that self-care and self-love is not selfish. And that has given me a new platform of discovery, of being able to be curious. And that's been my highlight of the year, because it has enabled me to literally have a life beyond what I could write. I am so grateful for my life and the people in it. That it's just, I could go on and on and on about all these people, you two included, but that's just not the point. So, but my life is so full. And then what I'm looking forward to, honestly, is helping other men like me, who look like me, who come from kind of similar backgrounds than me, and have been brought up with certain ideas around masculinity, and making a shift in that. And I'm not talking, and I'm starting off small, but making a global shift around how we challenge these.
Interrupting that system.
What's that?
Interrupting that system.
Interrupting that system. I love it. And with that, ladies, I hope you have a good rest of the day. What's on at Elephant and Castle? Thank you so much for everything for this last 3 lockdowns. We're really super looking forward to getting like boots on the ground in the community as soon as we can, and the wonderful people that have been on here as guests, and meeting everyone face to face, and just being part of that community is something that another thing that I'm looking forward to. So thanks so much for joining us. Next week, we have Catherine Trigg, who will be joining us, who's an artist and an advocate around some certain issues, which we'll talk about then. So join us then. And then this Thursday, Michelle and I are going to be leading a session, a gathering around, what's the topic? Do we have a topic already this month? Michelle?
Say that again, Mel.
Values.
Do we have it? Values. Okay. So Michelle and I are going to be leading a workshop this Thursday at 11 a.m. I'll put the link in the page, and hopefully we'll see some of you then. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye.